Hello and welcome to this tutorial for this corset and skirt set. If you are just doing the corset, keep watching. If you're doing the skirt, fast forward. So you're gonna need your pattern pieces multiplied by 2, and the special extra things that you are going to need are your eyelets, your eyelid tool, and some boning. That is all you're going to need for this tutorial. So we're going to start off by sewing actually our lining. So in the exact order that you see the pieces laid out is exactly how I'm going to sew them. I'm starting with my center pieces, then I'm going to move on to the back pieces. So I'm starting with all the pieces that are more like they have straight lines because it's just easier to start with those. And then from there we are going to move on to the pieces that have the curvature. Do not forget to transfer your notches and make sure that you capture that curve, because that is what's going to make your bust sit comfortably in the corset. And voila, this is what it looks like when I have put my seams together. So I used my serger because I don't want it to fray. You don't have to use a serger, you can use a straight stitch. Then on your leftover seam allowance, go ahead and use your zigzag stitch to stop it from fraying. I burn my ends, the end of every seam, I kind of burn it so that it doesn't unravel. You don't have to do that. I do that because I know it's not going to be seen. So here is a detailed look for what we did for step 1, right? The difference here is we are not going to serge yet because we don't want to cut our seam allowance, right? So basically I'm doing exactly what I did for the first step. I'm just taking the pieces and I'm serging each side, each seam basically. And this is what it looks like when it's done. This is the front facing fabric. When it's done, we're going to turn it over, and this is what our seams look like, nice and clean and neat. This is important. I want you to open the center like that because you are going to make casing on both sides. So this is what it should look like. Open it like that, press it with an iron. When you are done pressing your seams, I want you to turn over your top, and I want you to focus on a couple of things. Number 1, I've serged my edges because I don't want them to fray. You can do this with your zigzag stitch. And the number 2 important thing is that I do not cut anything when I serge. So make sure that your blade is disengaged. Then what you want to do is you want to iron all your seams. All your right seams need to be facing towards the right, and all your left seams need to be facing towards the left. Then on the center you want to open it up and then serge it twice. So instead of serging the center like all your other seams are going to be serged, like both pieces are going to be serged once, the center you are going to serge each piece, like each side individually. So basically I'm showing you here. So basically over here you see that I've taken both of those seams, the leftover seams, and serged them. But then for the center I have not done that. So anyway, what you're going to do now is you're going to take all your seams, because you've pressed them towards one side. You are now going to measure or estimate how much boning you need. My boning is 0.5 centimeters thick wide, so I'm going to make sure that I'm making enough space for it. So what you're going to do is push your seam towards the side, push it down towards the side, and then you are going to stitch, making sure that you are making a casing. So you don't need to buy special casing for this. This is how you do it. This is the easiest way to do it. This is what the 2 pieces look like. Here's the up close and personal look of what your channeling should look like. So in the center I've made channeling on both sides of those 2 pieces, right? On each side there's some channeling, and then on the other seams I've just made only one tunnel for our boning. because remember we just pushed the seams towards one side and then we made the boning, but the channeling for the boning, sorry. But then for the center, we pushed them, we split them in half, and then we made the channeling for that. Now we're going to put our lining and our front-facing fabric together, right sides together, and then we are going to sew that top seam. So when you are done sewing that top seam, what you want to do is you want to open your top and then you are going to press it, but you are going to press the seam allowance towards the back, towards the lining piece. Then you are going to make a top stitch right on top of that lining fabric towards the edge so that it doesn't move to the front. It doesn't show in the front when you're wearing the top. So this is what when it's done, and this is what it looks like right over there. So make a nice cute little straight stitch just to make sure that your lining doesn't protrude onto the front. Now it's time to work on the boning. Trust me, we're almost finished with this top. So what you're going to do as you work with your boning is whatever seam allowance that you use, because you have to add a seam allowance to the pattern. So I used 1/2 inch. You are going to mark that 1/2 inch seam allowance on all your all your channeling that you have, because you don't want to cut your boning too long. Then you can't stitch it. It's gonna mess up your sewing machine. So mark your seam allowance on all the tunneling that you have, the little channels that you have. So to straighten your boning, all you're going to need to do, I did not film this part because I'm assuming that we all know how to straighten our boning, but I will explain to you with words. You're just going to take your boning, right, because it's going to be curved, it's plastic boning, put it on top of your ironing board, take a paper, put the paper on top of the boning, then press it with an iron until it's flat. And then when it's flat, you want to hold it in that position until it cools down. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take your boning, put it towards the channeling, and then make a marking where you marked your seam allowance, but make that marking on the boning and then cut the boning. Then you can either use a nail file to just file that end to make sure that it's smooth and it's gonna, you know, go into your channeling smoothly, or you can do what I'm doing, which is using a little bit of fire to melt it and then smoothen it out, smoothen the edges out. So now you are going to insert your boning in the channeling that you made. Make sure that your channeling is big enough, or else it is going to be kind of tight and it's hard to put in. But so yeah, but you're going to put your channeling in all your boning and all your channels that you've created. Now, after you've inserted all your boning into your top, this is what it will look like. It will start to feel like it's coming together. So what you're going to do now is you are actually going to turn it inside out one last time, and then you are going to sew that side seam closed. Then you are also going to sew the other side seam closed. So this is what it will look like after you've stitched that side seam. I've obviously used my serger again. You don't have to, you can use your a straight stitch, then a zigzag stitch to prevent it from fraying. Now we are going to turn it inside out again Then we are going to pin it at the bottom and sew that bottom seam. And now this is what it looks like when I'm done sewing my bottom seam. I obviously use my serge, but be very careful with this part because you don't want to hit or touch the boning. Next thing is you are going to cut some bias strips, and then you are going to make your own bias binding. So making your bias binding is actually quite easy. You just want to make sure that you are cutting your strips on the bias of your fabric, and then what you're going to do is you are going to make sure you cut it extra thick, and then what you are going to do is you are going to fold it. You're going to fold both sides in. Don't worry if it overlaps because you're going to cut the excess off anyway. Then what you're going to do is you're going to open up one side of your bias binding, and then you are going to attach it to the bottom seam. Just like that. Now, to attach your binding, all that you are going to need to do is firstly start fold it in once, then pin it to your corset. Then when you are done, we're going to fold it over again like that, and this is what it will look like. I know it looks unneat right now, but we're going to sew it closed, and it's going to look absolutely neat. So now here we've done our first round of attaching the binding. The second round is what we're going to do is we are going to fold it over just like that. Then we are going to hand sew this part by taking our needle and thread, cutting off any excess threads that are just hanging around. You don't want that. Then you're going to put it like that. Make sure that your binding is covering the stitches that you made. So pull it to cover that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pierce my needle onto my corset, but make sure that you are not piercing it in the front. Make sure that you are only catching that lining fabric. Then I'm going to then pierce it again onto my binding, and making sure that I'm also not capturing the front of the binding. I'm just capturing the back of the binding, so the fold. The fold. So make sure that you are doing that going all the way. So all you're going to do is just hook the lining, then hook the back of the binding, hook the lining, hook the back of the binding. Keep going on until you are done. Again, make sure that you are not piercing all the way through to the front because it is going to be so unneat and you're not going to like it. So just hook the lining, then hook the back of the binding, hook the lining, then the back of the binding, then the lining, then the back of the binding, then the lining, then the back of the binding until you're done. So now we are done attaching our binding. What we're going to do is we are going to deal with that edge. So what I like to do, there are many ways to attach your binding. Obviously you can check on YouTube which way works for you. This is my way. So what I like to do is I like to get my binding together like that, press it, and then I'm going to use my needle again, and I'm using the same technique that I used to attach the binding, where I'm just stitching only the back of each side. So hopefully this is the video is explaining it. So just look at what I'm doing in the video and you'll see exactly how to do it. So make sure that you are not piercing through to the front again. So make sure that you are pushing everything inside. Then you're going to pierce only the inner part of your binding. and your needle should not be going all the way to the front. We don't want to see it, basically. Now you are going to make markings for where you would want to put your eyelids. This is all up to you. So now to put your eyelids, what you're going to do is you're going to start off by making a hole. After making a hole, make sure that your hole is slightly a little bit smaller, because if it's too big, then your eyelids are not going to sit properly. They're going to be kind of loose, and they're going to just come out of the hole. Then use your little eyelid tool thing to put them in place, to just snap them in place, to secure them, basically. So as you can see, I'm just trying to get all the fabric out the way. Then what I'm going to do, this is the wrong way to hold your tool. What you want to do is switch it the other way around, so that the part that has the little groove needs to be sitting on top, and the part that doesn't have the groove needs to be under. So that's very important. Sometimes your eyelids are not going to come out perfect. So what I like to do is, when I'm done with using the tool, I just like to use something to just hit, to just basically hammer it. And usually that just makes it nice and smooth and perfect. Now you are going to make a strap, and I suggest that you make your strap extra long. I made mine quite short, and I do not recommend that. Make yours about 1.5 meters long, basically. Make yours extra long. I'm basically turning my strap inside out now, and then after turning it inside out, you are going to put it through your eyelids. But before you put it through your eyelids, I would recommend that you actually burn the opening of your straps. When you're done turning it inside out, just burn the opening so that it doesn't fray. And yeah, then you are going to put it in your corset. This skirt is super easy to make. You are just going to need your 2 pattern pieces plus an elastic that is 4 centimeters wide and an elastic that is thinner. Then what you're going to do is you're going to start by serging the bottom seams of both your skirt pieces. When you are done serging those 2 bottom seams, all you have to do is put the 2 skirt pieces right sides together. Then you are just going to sew the side seams of both sides of the skirt. Now measure your waistband plus your preferred seam allowance. Then you are going to overlap your waistband at the ends and use a zigzag stitch to secure it. Now take the waistband and you are going to fit the waist part of your skirt into the waistband like how I'm doing in the video. When you have your waistband like that, you are actually then going to take it to your sewing machine, use a zigzag stitch to stitch it, or use your serger, but don't cut the elastic. Now mark 4 centimeters down for the elastic. This is where all your ruching, the ruching that you're going to use for the side seams and the middle is going to start. So mark 4 centimeters down and then make a mark of that. The next thing you want to do is make another mark in the middle of your skirt that on both sides. This is where you are also going to add your other elastic to make the nice ruching effect. So draw a line down there. The length of your skirt is 100% up to you. What you have to do is take your elastic without stretching it, put it on your waist, on your body, and then measure how long you want it. Do not stretch it at this point. You will actually stretch it when you put it on the elastic. So when you're measuring it on your body, just make sure that it's completely relaxed. Now the next thing you're going to do is you are going to attach your elastic on the side seams, the leftover seam allowance on your side seams. Then you are also going to attach it in the middle where you drew the line. When you are attaching your elastic, make sure that you are stretching your elastic to go from the top all the way to the bottom of the elastic. This is what you should have at the end of attaching your elastic. Remember, we are attaching it to the side seams and also the middle.